I genuinely have been like debating with myself if I even should make this video. But I feel that the closer my wife and I get to becoming parents, the more it pops up in my head, and the more I feel that I want to say something, but I just don't know how to, I guess. And I've always been kind of curious as to like why my dad left me. When I was younger, it was a lot harder. You know, I would visit him in jail sometimes, and he would always say, "Oh, I'm gonna do this, we're gonna do that, and do this." And at first, I'm like, "Okay, great," you know. And then when he wasn't locked up, I'm like, "Oh, we're gonna do all this stuff." And over time, I eventually start realizing like that's just not going to happen. And my mom, she was always like trying to replace him in a sense of she was doing double duty. You know, of course, she was a single mother and everything else. At the time, I had my middle sister, and you know, she was taking care of 2 kids by herself and things along those lines. And my sister always got to see her dad, but I didn't. And sometimes her dad would let me come over, and and even though he was nice, I always found it like uncomfortable, even when I was little, because I just felt like I was just there, you know. And eventually I got to the point where I stopped going over and I stopped talking to him and everything else because I just felt so out of place. And when it came to my own father, over time, you know, I remember crying about stuff and being angry, and people were like, "Oh, what did your dad do for you for your birthday?" And I would lie and say, "Oh, me and my dad did this and do that." And in reality, I don't even know where he's at. And it got to the point where I no longer cried, then I no longer lied, and then I just no longer cared. You know, I feel like in a sense, my dad not being around has helped me like become the person I am, because it takes a little bit more for me to emotionally be upset about things, and it takes a lot more for me to be like mad or hold a grudge against someone, because I started to do that. And then I even remember kind of holding a grudge against my mother, which obviously she did nothing wrong, but I was always like, well, maybe if you had done this and done that, you know, my dad would be around. But once I kind of got out of all of that, I realized that, you know, maybe he just doesn't want to be here. And I've always been curious as to why that was. And since we're getting closer, I feel personally that we're getting closer to becoming parents. I've always been curious, like, what kind of dad will I be? Now, everyone says, "Oh, you'll be a great father," but to me, I'm like, what does that mean? You know, I'm very, like, nurturing, a sense of, I feel that providing is love as well too. And of course, I don't mind the, you know, changing diapers and all that stuff, but the thing I look forward to the most when my wife and I finally have kids isn't just when they're small and cute and big-eyed and chunky-cheeked. It's more of when they get older. You know, believe it or not, I actually look forward to the teenage years when I can teach them, and when they can, you know, when I can give them my life advice and try to guide them down a path, you know, not my path, you know, whether my kid is gay, straight, whatever, I want them to be on the path of success for themselves, a happy life. But sometimes I'm like scared, like what does that mean for me as a man to teach my daughter what it means for what a man looks like, and my son what it means to be a man, because I've never really had that interaction, and I've never understood why. I'm 24 years old now, soon to be 25 in January, and recently my dad's come back into my life, and in more of a way of, we're more business related, because one day I was sitting at Waffle House at my old job. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm not paying any attention. I think I might have been reading something, and this man just sits in front of me, and for a second I'm staring at him like, "Can I help you? You know, what the heck do you want?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's my dad." And we start talking for a minute. He's like, "What do you do?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm a plumber, blah, blah, blah." He's like, "Oh, that's great. You know, who you work for?" So there's the van right there, etc. And we talked, and even though I should have been like, "Oh, hey, Dad," you know, I just was kind of like, "Hey, how are you doing?" You know, more like, "What can I help you with?" And it was strange to feel that way, because I didn't really know how to feel about him being there. And then he said, "Where do you live?" I told him where. He's like, "Oh, I'm literally like 5 minutes away from you." And he legitimately is 5-6 minutes away from me. Maybe 7 with a little bit of traffic. I mean, we live so close, it'd probably take me 30 minutes to walk to his house. And I'm like, you live that close to me? Now, granted, we never ran into each other beforehand, but I'm like, you live that close to me, and throughout the rest of my life, I never knew you were. But fast forward, he's into real estate, and he's teaching me about it. And if you're watching this, honestly, I'm not like dogging you or anything along those lines. I'm just trying to. My wife says I need to develop a relationship with my father, but it's kind of hard to develop a relationship with someone you really don't know. And like I said, no offense to you if you're watching this. He's been a great teacher in terms of real estate. I definitely want to create a solid business doing this real estate to the point where, who knows, I might be able to do this full time and make YouTube full time because I'm just killing it in real estate. And I really see this being as a way of providing for my family in a sense much greater than I can do now. I'm not saying that what I can do now, what me and my wife can provide now, is bad, but I feel I can do 10 times more. And seeing my mom struggle, you know, I was spoiled, but it came at a cost to her. And I never noticed that until I was older. And I would love to be able to take care of my mother in terms of like, hey mom, granted you got this somewhat new Honda. Do you like this car? Yeah, I do. Okay, well, I'll get it for you. Or hey mom, I'll take care of your mortgage or your bill. You know, I want to be able to do that, but at the same time too, I want my kids to be able to experience a little bit better of a life than I had. Mine was not bad. I mean, I grew up in the ghetto at first. My mom worked her tail off, put me in the suburbs, put me in one of the best schools districts in like the US. So I can't say like, oh, my life was hard. There were some hard times, but my mom killed it and I would love to be able to give back to her. But going back to my dad, it's like, it's hard to get past him as a teacher than my father. And it's strange because he has helped me out. I can't say he hasn't, but I don't know, it's hard to connect. And I'm afraid in a sense I don't know, like I know I'll be a good dad, but I don't know how I'm going to be a good dad. And I don't know how I'm going to be a man for them. Like it's so strange. Like I feel like I'm contradicting myself. I know what I need to do, but it's hard to figure out how I'm going to do this, you know? And the closer we get to possibly conceiving, I'm like, what if I'm kind of like shallow or something? I don't know. It's like I never had a dad, so it's kind of hard to figure out what I'm going to do as a dad, and it scares me in a little bit, in a sense. I mean, I know I'm going to be there for my wife and kids, but it's like, I don't know what to do. And I've wanted to ask my father many, many times, you know, why did you leave? You know, why did you do this? You know, even if my mom was being difficult, why didn't you try? You know, why did you just give up on me? Like, what did I do personally to deserve that, you know? And what did I do as a kid or a baby or whatever to make you say, I don't want to be around, you know? And that used to make me upset thinking about that, but now I'm like legitimately curious. Like I want to write down an answer. And like I said, I don't know what to do because he's more of a business, you know, tutor now. And I want to ask him that question, but at the same time, I don't know how to. And when I get around him, I only think about the business. And I don't, unless he says something first, I don't know if I'm ever going to, you know, say or question him because I don't know how to question him. You know, I don't know. It's difficult. Like it really, really is. And to feel like someone doesn't love you or they don't want you is heartbreaking. But like I said, I feel like that's actually made me stronger as a man. I'm just afraid that when I have kids, you know, like that I won't know what to do in terms of being a man for them, You know, I don't want to be one of those dads that are just like, oh, I provide and I pay the bills, that's love. You know, I don't feel like I'll be that way, but it's hard to see what one man's love to another is like. And my grandfather was in my life. He somewhat replaced my dad in a sense. He has his own problems. Every family has issues, but you know, once you got past all those problems, there was that love and genuine affection, everything else. Not going into details, but we haven't talked in a few years now, but it's like, I never really got to feel that sense of another man loving me as a father. I do have another boss who's like a father figure, but I'm not always around him, and it's hard to determine sometimes what's tough love and what's sarcasm, and it's just like, I just want to be a good dad, and I don't know what being a dad means. I guess when I hold my baby for the first time, I'll figure it out, but I really just want to know why my dad didn't want me.